The spaceship shook violently as it entered the planet's atmosphere. Warning lights flashed, alarms blared, and a deep groan of metal echoed through the hull. The alien woman, tall and lithe, gritted her teeth as she clutched the console, trying to keep control. She had trained for years for missions like this, but nothing could have prepared her for the turbulence that tore through her ship. The last moments of controlled flight slipped away, and she watched in horror as the land rushed toward her. Rocks, jagged and blackened by the sun, loomed closer. The ship slammed into the ground with a bone-shattering impact. Metal screamed and twisted, sparks flew, and a cloud of dust enveloped everything. She was thrown against the walls of the cockpit, her legs catching the worst of the force. Pain exploded in her joints. She could barely move. When she tried, she felt a sharp, searing pain. Her legs were broken. Everything around her was a mess. Wires hung from the ceiling, sparks shot like tiny stars, and smoke filled her nostrils. She tried to call for help, but the communication system was destroyed. No one could hear her. Her species was known for speed, agility, and strength. But now she felt helpless, trapped in her own body, unable to escape. She tried to calm herself, to think logically. Breathing slowly, she assessed the damage. Her legs were crushed beneath twisted metal. Her ship was beyond repair. She knew her chance of survival alone was slim. She glanced around for anything she could use, anything at all, but the wreckage offered nothing she could move by herself. Pain blurred her vision. Her heart pounded in panic as she realized she was entirely alone. Other survivors had probably fled, thinking she wouldn't make it. Her pride, her sense of independence, even her training, all of it told her she should fight, should push herself. But the truth was cruel. She couldn't move, and the world outside seemed endless and threatening. Time passed slowly, every second stretching into an eternity. Her thoughts wandered to her life before this mission. She remembered the bright skies of her homeworld, the laughter of friends, the careful preparation for exploration. All of it seemed like a lifetime away. Now, here, on a barren, rocky planet, she was vulnerable. Pain and fear became her only companions. Her mind tried to focus, to plan. Maybe she could crawl. Maybe she could drag herself. But the broken bones in her legs refused to cooperate. Each attempt sent sharp, stabbing pain through her body, forcing her back to the ground. She wanted to scream, but even that effort drained her energy. Then she heard it, a distant sound, soft at first, but gradually growing louder. It was different from the usual wildlife noises or the rumble of the storm. It was mechanical, steady, and approaching. She turned her head as best as she could, straining to see through the haze of dust and smoke. A human appeared, small and careful, moving across the wreckage with a device in his hands. His uniform was marked with medical insignia, and he seemed to be scanning the area. She instinctively froze, her alien instincts warning her to defend herself. Humans were unpredictable. She had studied them but never interacted with one up close. Could she trust him? The human stopped, noticing her, and his eyes widened. He didn't speak, just raised his hands slightly to show he meant no harm. The alien woman wanted to recoil, to hide, but her body refused to obey. She was rooted to the spot by fear and pain. Slowly, carefully, the human approached. He crouched near her, scanning her legs with a small device that hummed quietly. Numbers and symbols appeared on its screen, but she couldn't understand them. She only understood the message behind the human's careful movements. He was trying to help, not harm. She hesitated. Her pride screamed at her to push him away, to reject assistance. But the thought of remaining here alone, of dying slowly in agony, was worse. She allowed herself to nod slightly, a silent permission. The human smiled faintly, relieved, and began working. He lifted the debris carefully, his strength impressive, and supported her as he freed her legs from the twisted metal. Every movement sent jolts of pain through her body, and she gritted her teeth, fighting tears. She expected sympathy, pity, or disgust. But the human's expression remained calm and focused. He spoke softly, a language she barely understood, but the tone was gentle, reassuring. Using portable medical equipment, he began stabilizing her legs. Splints were fashioned from materials that seemed both alien and human. He checked her pulse, monitored her breathing, and whispered words of encouragement. She didn't understand most of what he said, but she understood the intention behind each word. She was not alone anymore. Hours passed as he worked. The alien woman's body ached, and the pain threatened to overwhelm her. But the human's presence was a strange comfort. He shared small gestures of patience, a gentle touch when she flinched, a calm word when she panicked, and a steady hand that refused to let go. She began to feel a flicker of hope, something she had not felt since the crash. She noticed the way he moved, how he adapted to her alien physiology without hesitation. He observed carefully, adjusted techniques, and never lost patience. She realized that humans, though not as fast or strong as her species, possessed something else: courage, creativity, and determination in the face of impossible odds. Her pride softened slightly. She had trained to rely only on herself, to never show weakness. Yet here she was, dependent on another being. She didn't like it, but she couldn't deny the truth. He was saving her life. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with colors she had rarely seen on this planet, her legs were partially stabilized. She could move slightly with support, though walking was still impossible. She tested the splints carefully, wincing as sharp pain shot through her joints. The human noticed and adjusted them with careful precision, muttering words she didn't understand, yet the tone conveyed reassurance. For the first time since the crash, she allowed herself a small smile. It was faint, almost invisible, but it was a start. She realized that survival wasn't just about strength or skill, it was about connection, trust, and courage. And in this desolate place, the human medic had shown all three. Night fell, and the temperature dropped sharply. The alien woman shivered despite her resilience. The human built a small fire and wrapped her in a thermal blanket, insisting she rest. She obeyed, exhausted beyond measure, and let herself drift into a light sleep, trusting him to stay by her side. Even in her sleep, her mind raced with questions. Who was this human? Why did he risk himself for a stranger? Could she ever repay him? More importantly, could she forgive herself for needing help? The planet outside was quiet, but not safe. Dangerous creatures roamed, and the terrain was harsh. Yet inside the small circle of light, warmth, and care, she felt a fragile sense of security. For the first time since the crash, she allowed herself to imagine survival, even hope. The human watched over her through the night, vigilant and unyielding. His dedication was quiet, but unwavering, a testament to a species she had underestimated. As the hours passed, she began to feel something she had thought impossible: gratitude. And alongside it, a new understanding of the human capacity for courage, compassion, and strength. When dawn broke, spilling pale light over the rocky landscape, she opened her eyes. The human was still there, adjusting the splints and checking her vitals. She looked at him, her gaze meeting his steady, calm eyes. And for the first time, she felt she might live. Not just survive, but truly live. The crash had taken everything from her freedom, her pride, her confidence in survival, but it had not taken her life. And perhaps, in the presence of this human, something more had begun, a bond forged in the harshest circumstances, one that neither of them fully understood yet. For now, survival was all that mattered. Pain, fear, and uncertainty remained. But so did hope, and hope, fragile as it was, could be stronger than any obstacle. The morning light seeped through the jagged rocks, casting long shadows across the barren landscape. The alien woman blinked, her eyes adjusting to the pale glow. Pain radiated from her legs, but it was less sharp than before. The human medic had stabilized her well, and for the first time, she could move slightly without crying out. She tested her legs carefully, wincing at the stiffness and soreness. But a small sense of accomplishment warmed her chest. She could survive, at least for now. The human sat nearby, checking his equipment. He had worked through the night, ensuring she was safe and protected. He glanced at her and gave a small nod, as if asking if she was ready. She met his eyes, and for a moment, the weight of their shared ordeal hung between them. She wanted to speak, to say something meaningful, but words were difficult. Instead, she nodded faintly, and he understood. They began moving slowly. The human supported her under her arms as she took tentative steps. Every movement was painful, but her determination was stronger than her fear. The ground was uneven, strewn with rocks and debris, and she stumbled more than once. Each time, he steadied her, guiding her forward without a word, letting her know she wasn't alone. As they walked, she began to notice small things about him. He moved carefully but confidently, scanning their surroundings constantly. His hands were steady, precise, even as he helped her walk. She realized that he was not just a healer. He was a protector. Someone who could face danger without hesitation. Humans were smaller and weaker than her species in many ways, but their courage, she could see, was enormous. They reached a small clearing where the ground was flatter. She collapsed onto a rock, exhausted. The human knelt beside her, examining her legs and adjusting the splints. She winced at the pressure, but he didn't flinch, his expression calm and focused. She felt a strange mix of frustration and gratitude. She was used to relying on herself, to being strong and independent. Now, she had no choice but to trust another being completely. As she rested, she studied him. His face was human, not particularly remarkable. Yet there was something about his eyes steady, determined, kind that drew her attention. She remembered the stories her species had been told about humans, unpredictable, sometimes reckless, sometimes compassionate in surprising ways. She had never truly understood what that meant until now. The human seemed aware of her gaze. He gave her a faint, reassuring smile and spoke softly, though she could only understand fragments of the words. The tone, however, was clear. He wanted her to feel safe. She nodded in response, a silent agreement, and he continued his work. As they moved forward, danger was never far away. The planet was harsh, with jagged cliffs and unstable ground. She had relied on her agility and speed. But now, every step required careful planning. The human seemed to anticipate her needs, pointing out loose rocks, adjusting her footing, and even shielding her from sudden gusts of wind. She began to realize that survival was not just about strength. It was about awareness, adaptability, and trust. Hours passed, and they found a small cave that could provide temporary shelter. The human set up a simple camp, gathering rocks to block the wind and arranging materials to keep her warm. She watched him work, fascinated by the way he used his knowledge of both the environment and the tools he carried. He seemed capable of facing any challenge with calm determination, and she began to admire his resourcefulness. Inside the cave, she tried to stretch her legs gently, testing the limits of her mobility. Pain flared sharply, but she gritted her teeth and continued. The human knelt beside her, offering support and encouragement without pressing her too far. She realized that he understood balance, not just in movement, but in care. He pushed when necessary, held back when needed, and always acted with patience. As the day wore on, the alien woman's curiosity grew. She wanted to know more about him, about his species, about why he risked himself to help a stranger. She asked questions in her language, slow and careful, and was surprised when he responded, attempting words in hers. His pronunciation was rough, and the sentences were simple, but the effort mattered more than perfection. She could sense his sincerity, and it warmed her in a way she hadn't expected. Night approached, bringing with it a biting cold. The cave offered some protection, but it was not enough to ignore the chill. The human built a small fire outside, careful to keep it hidden from potential predators. He motioned for her to stay inside, wrapped in a thermal blanket he had fashioned from his equipment. She obeyed, watching the flames dance in the darkness. The warmth was comforting, and she felt a sense of safety she had not felt since the crash. As they settled in for the night, they shared small stories. She spoke of her homeworld, of the vast cities and forests, of the creatures that lived alongside her people. He spoke of Earth, of mountains, rivers, and deserts, of the resilience of humans in the face of adversity. Though their languages were different, the exchange created a connection, a bridge between species. She realized that courage and hope were not limited to any one form of life. Sleep came slowly. Pain and discomfort made it difficult, but she allowed herself brief moments of rest, trusting the human to stay alert. She drifted in and out of consciousness, haunted by memories of the crash, yet comforted by the steady presence beside her. Even in her dreams, she felt his guidance, his protection, and a growing admiration for his strength. The next day brought more challenges. Her legs were improving, but she still needed support. The terrain outside the cave was rough and dangerous, and every step required careful attention. She noticed how the human anticipated dangers she hadn't even considered: loose rocks, sharp edges, sudden drops. He moved with quiet confidence, always ensuring she could follow safely. At one point, a small predator emerged from the rocks, drawn by the scent of food. She froze, instincts screaming to flee, but her legs refused to cooperate. The human acted instantly, creating a barrier between her and the creature with a metal rod he carried. He didn't panic, didn't hesitate. He assessed the situation, acted with precision, and the creature retreated. She stared at him in awe. He was not just brave, he was clever, resourceful, and unafraid to face danger head-on. Through these trials, the alien woman began to trust him more. She still relied on her instincts, but she allowed him to guide and protect her. She realized that trust was not weakness, it was strength, a way to survive when the odds were against her. Her pride, once so rigid, softened in the face of necessity. As the day progressed, they encountered more challenges: steep slopes, unstable rocks, and sudden gusts of wind. Each obstacle tested their coordination and patience. She learned to rely on his guidance, and he adapted to her movements, creating a rhythm that allowed them to move forward safely. It was a slow, painstaking process, but progress was progress. By evening, they reached a small plateau with a view of the surrounding landscape. She looked out at the vast expanse of rocks, valleys, and distant mountains. It was beautiful in a harsh, alien way, but it was also dangerous. Survival here would not be easy, but she felt a growing sense of determination. She was not alone. The human sat beside her, sharing a simple meal from his supplies. They ate in silence for a while, the unspoken understanding between them stronger than words. She realized that their bond had grown beyond necessity. It was built on mutual respect, shared struggle, and the recognition of each other's courage. Night fell again, colder than before. But this time, she did not fear it as much. She had someone beside her who could face the dangers, someone who would not abandon her, no matter the risk. She felt a sense of hope she hadn't known in days, a fragile, glowing ember that promised survival, recovery, and perhaps even something more. As she drifted into a restless sleep, she thought about the future. Her legs would heal further, and she would regain strength. But the journey was far from over. Yet, for the first time since the crash, she believed she could face what came next. With the human medic by her side, she felt a quiet confidence. She could survive, she could endure, and she could trust, even if only a little, in the kindness and courage of another being. The night passed, and the alien woman dreamed not of the crash, not of pain or fear, but of movement, of running across open plains, of leaping over obstacles, of freedom restored. She awoke with the memory of the human's steady presence, and for the first time, she smiled genuinely. Survival was no longer a lonely struggle. It was a shared journey, and she would face it with him, step by painful step. The alien woman woke to the harsh light of the sun, cutting through the thin clouds above the plateau. Her legs ached, but the pain was manageable now. The splints had held through the night, and with each step, she felt herself gaining strength. The human medic was already awake, carefully inspecting the terrain ahead. He motioned for her to get ready. Today, they would have to leave the plateau and continue toward safety. The path before them was rough. Jagged rocks jutted from the ground, and loose gravel made every step treacherous. The alien woman tested her legs, bracing herself as the human offered his arm for support. Step by careful step, they moved forward. She was slower than she had ever been, and frustration bubbled inside her. But the human's steady presence reminded her that speed was not everything. Survival required patience, awareness, and strategy. As they descended a rocky slope, she nearly slipped, her body jerking in pain. The human caught her with a swift motion, his strength surprising her once again. He steadied her, speaking softly in his broken attempt at her language. She understood the tone: reassurance, encouragement, and calm. She nodded, grateful but silent, letting him lead. Each step became a careful dance between caution and determination. The terrain grew harsher as they entered a narrow canyon. Shadows stretched across the walls, hiding crevices and jagged rocks. The alien woman's species was built for speed, for leaping across wide distances. But now, crippled as she was, she had to adapt. The human, however, was prepared. He scanned the canyon with sharp eyes, pointing out safe footholds and unstable sections. He even tested rocks with a stick before letting her step. She marveled at his careful planning. His species may not have had her natural agility, but their intelligence and caution were unmatched. Suddenly, a loud screech echoed through the canyon. Her head snapped up, instincts flaring. A predator, one native to this harsh planet, emerged from the shadows. It was large, with claws that gleamed dangerously, and eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light. Her heart raced. She wanted to run, to leap, to escape as she once could, but her legs would not obey fully. Panic rose like a tide, threatening to swallow her. The human moved between her and the creature. He didn't shout, didn't panic. He assessed quickly, picking up a jagged rock and hurling it near the predator's feet to distract it. The creature hesitated, uncertain. With swift, precise movements, he guided her to step behind a boulder, creating a barrier between them and the predator. She realized, with awe, that humans were brave in ways she had underestimated. They could face danger with intelligence and courage, rather than relying solely on physical prowess. After a tense moment, the predator retreated, disappearing into the canyon's shadows. She exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she had been holding. Her legs shook from fear and exertion, and the human placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. No words were needed. His calm presence reassured her, and she felt herself drawing strength from his confidence. She realized that survival here was no longer about fighting alone. It was about partnership, trust, and mutual support. They continued through the canyon, moving more cautiously now. Each step was measured, deliberate. She began to notice more about the human. The careful way he balanced speed and caution. The subtle gestures that communicated safety. The determination that never wavered. She had expected humans to be fragile in the face of danger, but this one defied every assumption. He was strong in ways that mattered most. As the sun climbed higher, the heat of the planet intensified. They were exposed, with little shelter from the sweltering air. She felt fatigue creeping in, sweat dampening her skin, and pain flaring in her legs. The human noticed and guided her to a small crevice, providing shade. He handed her a small water container. Gesturing for her to drink, she obeyed, grateful for the simple but vital gesture. Even small acts of care now carried profound meaning. During a brief rest, they exchanged more about their lives. She described the landscapes of her homeworld, of cities that floated above clouds, and forests that glimmered in strange colors. He spoke of Earth, its mountains, deserts, and oceans, of humans enduring hardship and overcoming impossible odds. Words were simple, fragmented at times, but the meaning was clear. They were learning from each other, bridging the gap between species through shared experiences and stories. Their journey was far from easy. They encountered steep cliffs and crumbling paths, forcing them to use ingenuity to progress. At one point, a small rock slide blocked their route. The alien woman wanted to climb over, using the agility she once possessed. But her legs were weak and fragile. The human assessed the situation, picking up a long, sturdy branch. With careful guidance, he created a makeshift support, allowing her to maneuver safely across the debris. Each obstacle they overcame deepened their trust and respect for each other. Night fell, colder than expected, and the alien woman shivered despite her alien physiology. The human gathered rocks to form a windbreak and set a small, controlled fire to provide warmth. He offered her part of a thermal blanket and gestured for her to rest. She obeyed, leaning back against the rocks and letting exhaustion wash over her. Despite the discomfort, she felt safe in a way she had not since the crash. She thought about her feelings toward the human. Initially, she had been wary, distrustful, even suspicious. Now, she recognized something more profound: admiration, respect, and a growing bond forged through adversity. He had saved her life once, and he continued to do so every step of the way. His courage, intelligence, and unwavering focus had impressed her deeply. She realized that she was not just grateful, she trusted him, completely, in a way she had never trusted anyone before. The night was quiet except for the distant howls of native predators. Her mind wandered, imagining what awaited them beyond the canyon. The journey was far from over, but she no longer felt despair. The human's presence was a constant reminder that survival was possible. Even in the harshest conditions, she felt hope stirring a fragile, glowing ember in the darkness. Sleep came in fits and starts, broken by discomfort and pain. Yet she felt safe enough to let her body rest. The human remained vigilant, scanning the terrain even as she slept. She watched him occasionally, marveling at his diligence and patience. Humans may not have been physically superior, but they possessed a resilience, creativity, and bravery that she had underestimated. Morning came, bringing new challenges. The canyon opened into a rocky valley, strewn with boulders and uneven ground. They had to move quickly before the sun became unbearable, but the terrain made every step difficult. The alien woman leaned heavily on the human's support, each movement testing her endurance. He adjusted his grip, encouraging her with soft words and gentle gestures. She realized that this journey was teaching her patience, humility, and the importance of cooperation. As they navigated the valley, a sudden storm swept through. Dust and debris swirled violently, reducing visibility. The alien woman struggled to keep her balance, her legs unsteady on the shifting ground. The human shielded her with his body, leading her to a small rock overhang that offered temporary protection. The storm was fierce, but his calm guidance allowed her to survive it without serious injury. When the storm passed, they emerged to find the valley littered with fallen rocks and debris. The alien woman's legs ached fiercely, but she refused to give up. The human adjusted her splints and helped her move forward, step by step, slowly regaining momentum. She began to understand that survival here was not about speed or strength alone. It was about perseverance, adaptability, and trust. By the end of the day, they reached a small plateau, overlooking a river that glimmered in the fading light. The sight was breathtaking, a rare moment of beauty in a harsh, unforgiving world. She took a deep breath, savoring the view, feeling the warmth of the human's presence beside her. They had endured danger, pain, and fear together, and now they had achieved a moment of respite. As night fell, they made camp once more. The human gathered wood for a fire, while she rested, feeling the soreness in her legs gradually subside. She reflected on the journey so far, realizing that her perspective on humans had changed. They were capable of bravery, ingenuity, and compassion that rivaled any strength she had once admired in her own species. She looked at him quietly, appreciating his unwavering dedication. He had saved her once, and he continued to protect and guide her through every challenge. She felt a growing sense of connection, a bond forged in adversity and mutual respect. Survival was no longer just a personal struggle, it was a shared effort, and she was beginning to understand the power of unity and trust. As she drifted into sleep, she allowed herself a small, genuine smile. The journey ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and hardship, but for the first time, she believed they could overcome it together. With the human by her side, she felt a newfound strength, not just in her body, but in her spirit. Hope had returned, fragile but enduring, and she knew that whatever lay ahead, they would face it as partners, each step bringing them closer to safety and survival. The alien woman woke to the faint glow of morning light reflecting off the distant river. Her legs were sore, but the pain was far less than it had been when she first awoke after the crash. The human medic was already awake, quietly preparing for the day ahead. He glanced at her with a small nod, silently asking if she was ready to continue. She met his gaze and nodded, feeling a mixture of nervousness and determination. Today, they would reach safety, or at least something resembling it. The journey through the valley had been difficult, and she knew the path ahead would be just as challenging. The terrain was rugged, with jagged rocks, steep slopes, and scattered debris from past storms. Yet, she felt a growing confidence. Each step taken over the past days had strengthened her legs and her resolve. With the human's steady support, she felt capable of moving forward. Even against the odds, they began walking slowly, step by careful step. The alien woman leaned on his arm when necessary, but with every step, she relied on her own strength more. The human guided her through the uneven ground, pointing out potential dangers and suggesting safer paths. His vigilance never wavered. She realized that humans, though smaller and weaker physically than her species, had a unique resilience. They could adapt, anticipate, and endure in ways that were extraordinary. As they progressed, the alien woman noticed subtle signs that the planet was less hostile in this region. Small patches of vegetation appeared, and distant sounds of running water promised relief. She felt a glimmer of hope, her spirits lifting. The human moved with calm efficiency, scanning the surroundings constantly. He carried a small pack with supplies, tools, and water, prepared for anything. His careful planning impressed her more with every step. They reached a narrow canyon leading toward the river. Shadows stretched across the walls, creating deep contrasts of light and dark. The alien woman's species was agile and swift, accustomed to leaping across obstacles. But now she had to carefully navigate each step. The human's presence was steady and reassuring. He held her arm, guided her footing, and spoke softly in words she partially understood. His tone conveyed patience, reassurance, and unwavering support. Suddenly, a low growl echoed from the canyon walls. A predator, sleek and dangerous, emerged from the shadows. Its eyes glowed faintly, and sharp claws scraped the rocky ground. The alien woman froze, instincts urging her to flee. Her legs, though stronger now, were still fragile and unprepared for a sudden sprint. Panic surged, and for a moment, she thought they would be trapped. The human acted immediately. He placed himself between her and the predator, moving with precision and confidence. He threw a small rock to distract the creature, then guided her behind a larger boulder. The predator hesitated. Its curiosity piqued, but the human's calm, steady movements made it retreat slowly into the shadows. The alien woman's heart raced, but she felt an immense respect for his courage and skill. Humans might not have natural strength, but they had something equally powerful: courage, intelligence, and determination. Once the predator had disappeared, they continued cautiously through the canyon. Every step required focus, patience, and careful balance. The alien woman began to trust her own abilities more, realizing that the human's guidance and her own determination together formed a strong combination. They moved in silence, communicating through gestures and glances. Words were not necessary. Their shared experience created a bond stronger than speech. As they neared the river, the terrain leveled. Small pools of water reflected the sun, and patches of green promised respite. The alien woman's legs ached, but the movement itself felt exhilarating. She realized she could walk, carefully but steadily. Without constant support, the human noticed her growing independence and offered quiet encouragement. A smile tugged at her lips, a rare moment of genuine joy in their long struggle. The river was wider than she expected, flowing swiftly through the rocky landscape. She approached it carefully, dipping a hand into the cool water. The sensation was refreshing, revitalizing her body and spirit. The human knelt beside her, sharing some of his water from the pack. She drank, feeling grateful and amazed at his foresight and preparation. Survival was no longer merely about enduring pain, it was about cooperation, awareness, and trust. They followed the river upstream, moving slowly but steadily. The alien woman felt stronger with every step, her confidence growing alongside her physical recovery. She observed the human's attentiveness, the way he assessed risks, and guided her through the uneven terrain. His determination never wavered. And she realized that this bond, forged in adversity, was as crucial to their survival as strength or skill. As the day progressed, the alien woman began to speak more freely. She shared details about her life, her mission, and her species. Her words were slow and deliberate, but the human listened with patience, occasionally nodding or responding with simple words in her language. The exchange was basic, yet meaningful. They were learning from each other, understanding each other's strengths and weaknesses, and building trust beyond survival. The journey was not without challenges. They had to navigate around fallen boulders, steep inclines, and patches of unstable ground. Her legs still required caution, and the human's guidance remained essential. Yet, with each obstacle, she grew more confident. She realized that humans were resilient in ways her species had never fully appreciated. They could endure, adapt, and solve problems under pressure, relying on intelligence and cooperation rather than sheer physical ability. Evening approached, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. They reached a small clearing by the riverbank, where soft sand and gentle water offered a moment of relief. The alien woman sank to the ground, letting the cool water soothe her aching legs. The human knelt beside her, offering a simple meal from his pack. She ate slowly, savoring the taste and the comfort of shared sustenance. As darkness fell, they set up a small camp near the river. The human gathered stones for a fire and arranged materials for shelter. He handed her a thermal blanket, and she wrapped herself carefully, feeling the warmth seep into her tired body. For the first time in days, she felt a sense of safety and stability. The journey had been grueling, but they had survived together. Sitting beside the fire, she reflected on everything that had happened. The crash, the pain, the fear, all of it had been overwhelming. Yet, through it all, the human had been a constant presence, guiding, protecting, and encouraging her. She realized that survival was not merely about physical strength. It was about courage, intelligence, trust, and the willingness to support another being. Sleep came slowly, but she allowed herself to rest. The human remained alert, watching the surroundings with careful vigilance. Even in her dreams, she felt the reassurance of his presence. She dreamed not of the crash or pain, but of movement, of running freely across open landscapes, of leaping over obstacles, and of the sense of freedom she had feared lost forever. The next morning, she awoke with renewed determination. Her legs were stronger, her body more agile, and her spirit lighter. She could move more confidently now, taking steps without relying heavily on the human's support. He noticed and offered a quiet smile, a simple gesture that conveyed pride, encouragement, and companionship. Together, they followed the river further, moving toward what she hoped was safety. The alien woman reflected on the bond that had formed between them. It was not just survival. It was trust. respect, and understanding. They had faced danger, pain, and uncertainty, yet had emerged stronger and more connected. She realized that this human had changed her perspective, showing her that courage, ingenuity, and compassion could come in forms she had never anticipated. As the sun climbed higher, they reached a point where the river widened, and the terrain became gentler. Trees and plants appeared, providing shade and resources. The alien woman marveled at the sight, feeling a sense of relief and accomplishment. They had traversed harsh terrain, faced predators, survived storms, and endured pain, and now, a place of relative safety awaited them. The human helped her navigate the final stretch, his hands steady and reassuring. She felt gratitude swell in her chest, realizing that this journey had forged more than physical endurance. It had created a connection between them, a bond of trust and mutual respect that transcended species. At the edge of the river, they finally paused. The alien woman could stand independently, her legs strong enough to support her without constant assistance. She looked at the human, her expression filled with gratitude and admiration. He met her gaze, and they shared a quiet moment of understanding. Words were unnecessary. Their actions and experiences spoke louder than language ever could. The journey had not been easy, and challenges still lay ahead, but they had survived. The alien woman felt a sense of hope she had not known since the crash. She knew that with courage, determination, and the support of the human beside her, she could face whatever came next. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the river, she took her first confident steps along the shore. The human followed, walking beside her, a steady presence in an uncertain world. Together, they had faced danger, endured pain, and discovered the strength of cooperation and trust. For the alien woman, the experience had changed her profoundly. She had learned that survival was not only about strength and skill, but about courage, trust, and the willingness to accept help. She had discovered the resilience of humans, the depth of their compassion, and the power of connection. The final scene found her walking along the riverbank, the human at her side. The planet still held challenges, but she felt ready to face them. Pain and fear remained, but hope, courage, and trust burned brighter. She had survived, grown stronger, and discovered that even in the harshest circumstances, bonds could form, and new beginnings were possible. And for the first time since the crash, she believed not just in survival, but in the possibility of thriving side by side with a human who had shown her the true strength of courage, compassion, and unwavering determination.